Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. Today's guest is Barbara Negron, a senior fintech executive with more than 15 years of experience in embedded finance, sponsor banking, and digital banking innovation. Embedded finance simply means financial services like payments, lending, or banking that are built right into the apps and platforms you already use instead of requiring you to go to a bank. Barbara has led commercialization and go-to-market efforts for embedded finance and banking as a service programs at FIS, helping banks and finance and fintech platforms build scalable and compliant financial ecosystems. Beyond fintech strategy, Barbara is passionate about mentorship, representation in technology, and developing the next generation of leaders. Barbara, welcome to the show. And how many times can I trip over the word fintech? That's
Well, hi, Wayne, Dr. Wayne. Thank you for having me. Throughout my career, I've learned that innovation in fintech and financial service doesn't just happen because of technology, it happens because of people. So this willingness to share knowledge across the industry, I think is important as we move forward.
that's fabulous. It is about people. It doesn't matter what industry we're in. It seems like any vertical, there's platform, there's process, and there's people without,
People.
right? AI is a thing, that's great, but without
Hmm.
people, it doesn't connect to it. It doesn't do anything, right? So fintech, you've been in it for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, but you didn't wake up one day going, well, I think I'll be a fintech exec. You started doing what?
Well, just the opposite. I went to school for hotel management. I mean, I was a totally different career. Fintech was never in my brain path, nothing I thought I would ever be doing in the space. Financial technology, I never considered myself a techie, but I ended up being a techie. So it was just an interesting path to get me where I was going, and I found my passion and I did pretty good for a while, so I stuck with it.
That's awesome. Okay, so did you go to school for hospitality
I
services?
did. I
Yeah.
did. I lived in the beautiful island of Puerto Rico for a while, and I
Oh,
worked in a Hilton down in Puerto Rico, and I went to college to study hospitality and learn a little bit more about the industry and management. And as I was doing it, I realized management is management. And I think any education that you learn, regardless of the path you take with you as you grow in your different industries. But what I found was that hospitality wasn't my passion. But the industry, the leadership side of it was. So Hilton International has an excellent management program that I started to learn a lot about, and their way of going to school to create their management leaders is you have to learn every aspect of the business to be able to manage something, right? So I kept this and I learned this as I was studying in school and going through my career. The best leaders are the ones who have worked their way across the different industries to understand how the company and how the industry works. So I used that as a stepping stone for myself as I grew in the tech industry to learn different parts of the industry and just take that along with me.
that's amazing. That's really great. And it's nice to hear that about a large company. You hear the opposite so much that it's like
Hmm.
we're growing so fast, or they're like any corporation. And what you said about Hilton, it's like I'm not affiliated with them other than
Hmm.
that's like Hilton, Marriott are I they're my go-to. But
Hmm.
uh
And I don't even know if it's really changed. And when I started, back in the dark ages,
yeah,
that was one
back
of the
in the dark
management
ages.
that was one of the management programs that I found to be fascinating, right? It was just because of their way of doing things, and I'm hoping that they still have that type of program in effect or any other industry. You learned every aspect of what it was to work in the hotel industry,
Yeah.
and then to get into the management program, which means laundry front desk, housekeeping, everything. I mean, and that made just in my perspective, when I heard about it and then I saw it, I was like, oh, this is what how it's so easy to manage somebody when you can actually say, well, I can tell you how to do it because I did it myself,
I
right?
love
And I can
that.
lead. I mean, many a times I feel like leaders are giving the positions not only because they've grown up in the position and they've learned the positions, but having the ability to work different positions and learn different ways of how things are work gives you this expertise that you wouldn't get any other way.
I think that's fabulous. You know, a lot of times the best doers, the ones who know how to do a particular role, are promoted into management and given no training about
Hmm.
how to manage, how to lead. It's like, well, you're good at this thing, just, step up here. And it sounds like Hilton is very deliberate about, you know what, if you're gonna be a leader, you need to be comfortable in every area.
Yeah, that was my understanding, and I will say as well on the opposite side of the house, sometimes I've worked with leaders who were given that position because they've been doing the job for so long that haven't gotten the leadership training that they need, which also becomes a hindrance because not everybody's meant to lead as well, like lead people in per se. So that also becomes a bit of an issue as well.
That's a huge statement too, and to know that about yourself, like I'm pausing here to make that a point for our audience that it's like leaders are great. I believe everybody is a leader because at some level you're being watched. At the same time, what you said is absolutely true. Not everyone is really meant to lead. Like,
Hmm.
and you'll know for yourself, do you want to be a leader? And if so, get the skills that it takes. You did a transition from hospitality into finance and financial technology ultimately, which wasn't probably a thing when you first started out.
It wasn't, that's for sure.
Yeah, so what was the transition? Was it part of the, wow, I
Oh
was with
boy.
Hilton, I was exposed to finance, and then I,
Not at all. It's so far from it. I studied something and then I had moved to Florida, thinking that I was going to get into hospitality, being that I was in the Orlando area, which is, Disney, hospitality central.
sure,
And I started a job at a, believe it or not, a pediatrician while I was trying to get my real career launched. And during that time frame, I was in the billing department. I was still doing finance and in a different aspect of it. And then I worked for an insurance company, one of the larger insurers in the country. And then I went from the insurance company to a bank, and then from the bank to the financial tech industry that the bank used. So I had an unconventional path to where I was going. They're all connected because it was always in the financial sector, whether it be with an insurance company or a bank, all regulated in the back end financial industry, but it was all financial. It was just not a traditional path to get to where I was going, but yet here I am.
it's amazing. So this is one of the things, Steve Jobs was famous for saying, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards,
Hmm.
right? And so every little piece brought you to that next place. And, you went from hospitality to a pediatrician's office. You got into finance sort of indirectly, and then finance built finance, built finance. And now you're at FIS. Along the way, I mean, we opened this program talking about people. Along the
Hmm.
way, it wasn't just about numbers. It was about how you navigated through the workforce, right? And you had
Sure.
people ultimately reporting to you. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that a little bit? What was that like the first time you actually had a team?
So it started pretty small. I naturally went into managing team. I think that was something that I felt like we talked about before. I felt like I was a leader from the beginning. So I tend to take these leadership roles on pretty early on, and every aspect of my career. So I started in the doctor's office, and I started leading there a small team of people doing billing. And then when I went into the insurance industry, it was just a natural progressing in the billing side. And I started managing a team of people who worked within this large insurance company. And I was doing billing for individual insurance carriers. And then I worked with Cobra and how we were billing individuals Cobra and how the insurance processes work. And then that just led me to an output. So things happened, I think. Let me just take a step back here.
Yeah.
When different things that happened in the world affected my growth pattern. So when I was in the insurance company was September 11th happened, and it was this change in how the market was doing things and seeing business, and it
Hmm.
was just the beginning of offshoring, where every large organizations were offshoring big teams off to different areas in the outside of the U.S. And
Hmm.
that forced me because the company that I was working with was going to start offshoring after September 11th some of their billing practices overseas to the Philippines. And at that point, I had to make a decision for me and my team. Did I want to go to the Philippines and build out this global team, or did I want to stay? And there was a community bank that there was a big news article about how teams were offshoring a lot of their business. And my company, being that they were a large insurance provider, was part of the news article about how they were moving out of Florida and going overseas. That
Mm.
led the bank to call me to say, "Hey, we saw this article where we need someone with your type of expertise to come and manage this operations here at this bank and build out our operations team here in this bank. Do you want to come?" And I was like, well, sounds like a perfect plan. I don't want to go to the Philippines right now. And so
So
it
you were
just
invited to stay put.
to stay put. So,
That's great.
it was a change of industry completely. It wasn't insurance, it was financial, it was banking. And I was like, hey, this is my opportunity for me to stay. And I will say that different changes in my life have happened because of these types of opportunities. I was in the banking sector for a long time. I was working in the lending space, and then the mortgage debacle happened in the country, and I was like, "Oh, I need to find a new line of business because the lending space, the mortgage industry is going south." And I had an opportunity to work with the tech company that the bank was working with in the mortgage industry, and I made a move to there. So I will say that a lot of the things that happened in the world influence a lot of the decisions I've made. But what I will say is that I looked at these different that could be seen as negative as opportunities for growth and for leadership, and I just took embrace them because I think change is the only constant in life. So you have to embrace some of these changes and go with it. And with that, I was able to bring my teams along with me a lot of the times. So some of the people that I work with in the insurance ended up working for me at the bank, and then I brought them along to the tech company as well. So as you build these relationships and these teams, you build these um, you build this I want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? You build these relationships that early on that help you to grow as a leader, and you help them to grow in the positions, and then those things come with you along the way.
Love that. Yeah, three key words jump out, and I want to make sure that that they are ringing for our audience. The first is relationships. Like
Hmm.
you've mentioned that a few times. That is so important. The banking industry doesn't work without really solid relationships, especially behind the scenes. Then customer facing, that's a different arena all the way around. Opportunities was the other thing you brought up, and growth was the third. Opportunities come from the way you look at challenges. I think that's amazing, right? So like we're all given challenges at pretty much every day.
Hmm.
Every month, every week, every day, we're given challenges. And you have a perspective that I don't know if it's trained or if you got it from your parents growing up, or, where did that come from? Because a lot of people will go, oh my gosh. not again. Here I am, I'm on this path, the rug is now pulled out from under me. Look at what happened to this industry. Look at what happened to the world. Look at what happened, right? And so there's so much outward looking, almost blame. And you're like, yeah, that stuff's happening and I can make the best of it. How do you do that?
So, I want to say that it was the way I was raised. I was blessed with a family who were a family of achievers in every aspect of their life. I will say that my great grandfather migrated from Puerto Rico to New York years in the early 30s and started our family, but nothing was an obstacle for anybody. I remember my dad even saying, and my grandfather, as I think back, you can do anything that you want to do as long as you work hard, and everything is going to happen. You could have everything you want, you just need to work for it. So that was something that I always believed in, and I kept in the forefront of my thinking. And every time something happened, I was like, well, this is all I need to do is work hard and make it work. And it's really worked for me. And I think it works. And I try to instill that in my children as they grow old. I mean, there is things that happen that we don't expect in life, but if you embrace it for what it is and look at the positive instead of the negative, I think that's another thing. I don't like negative things around me. I think I always try to look for, okay, there has to be a positive with everything that's happened, whether it be negative. And I mean, we all go through some difficult times, right? There are some difficult challenges that we face,
Mm.
whether personally or professionally. But there's always something that can be pulled out of that could be viewed as positive. And if you just take that one little positive thing and build on it, I think there's opportunities for growth.
Oh, so great, Barbara. So well said, right? It's kind of like planting a seed. You take one little thing and you nurture it and
Hmm.
it grows, right? So if it's an opportunity, that's fabulous. If it's a person, I'm going to transition to talking about mentorship and sponsorship.
Hmm.
If it's a person, then you are growing that person. And you talked about taking your team along the way. So what's the difference? Let's talk about that for a few minutes. What's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship?
I think there's a big difference, right? So I think we all, I at least in my professional life, have met people who I consider mentors who have given me some key points of growth and learning that I've taken with me, or different ways of seeing maybe opportunities in the way. But the people that really have made a difference are those who not only mentor me, but sponsor me. They are the ones who are going to be like what I try to do with some of the people that I work with, right?
Yeah,
Not only teach me, okay, this is the way to do business, but like, let me help you get there. Let me make some introductions for you on what's going to happen. And I have found that in my career and in my life and my personal life, not just in my career, those people that I have sponsored along the way, it always comes back somehow. You relate, you build these relationships. I mean, we talked about it a bit ago.
yeah.
Relationships that are forever. Whether it be professionally, sometimes they grow into personal relationships beyond just the professional relationships. And if you do these types of sponsorships, not looking for anything in return, but just being able to help somebody achieve what they're trying to achieve. And if you have the capacity and the ability to do so, I will tell you, I feel like life has always given this back to me twofold.
I love that. I love that. And relationship is about coming together again, right? That it's like
Mhm.
these individuals that come together, and I talk about this when I talk about couples work. It works in networking as well. Re is again, lation is to come together, and ship is the
Mhm.
state of. And so a relationship is about coming together again. And when you're in a sponsor-sponsee relationship, and then you as the sponsee grow to a position where you can pass that on. One of my other favorite sayings is lift as you lead, and you are an amazing example of that. That, right? You've been lifted, you're in leadership, and now you reach your hand back and say, "Come with me." And it's one of the reasons that I wanted you on this program was to kind of share that philosophy too, that It really is about you see the opportunity to help and you pause long enough to do it. And I was just thinking that, a lot of times we think of people in the banking industry or fintech as, so on the go and so greedy and so out for, the buck. And it's like all of that stuff that our society says hovers around money. And you're like, no, it's like money's a thing, but it really is the people, right? So,
I agree 100%. It's, you know, I think tech gets a bad rap sometimes because tech moves really quick, and there's a lot of, and I think people look at tech as, okay, this is where the money's at, this is where I'm going to make money and grow. But I will tell you, the relationships in the tech industry are so deep. There are, I mean, right now I'm part of a WhatsApp group that has of all these founders that have found each other, and they just, when they need something, they reach out to each other saying, hey, do you know of a person who can help me with compliance, or do you know of a company? And it's all about these relationships, and they may start in one arena and move on to the other arena, and you'd be surprised who you see along the way and who you'll see from 5 years from now in another industry that you never expected them to be in. But the relationships are built and they grow, and it to keep, I think it's really important just to not forget the people that helped you get to where you're going, because you don't know where they're going to be in 5 years compared to where you are. And doing things unselfishly and doing things with the opportunities to help people to grow always comes back. And you will, and you may not see it but when you least expect it, that opportunity will be there.
so great. That's so great. It's lead with a big heart. Lead because you can. Lift people along the way because you can.
Hmm.
It's so important. And
And those are the leaders that I remember, at least, right? I can go back and I can look at the people who mentored me. In fact, I was speaking to one today, and he to me was always such a good person, right? So beyond being a good a mentor and a good sponsor, he was a good person. And that's something that makes you want to work with somebody and make them do good because they're good people. So, just beyond, the industry standards, it's being a good person. Like you said, lead with your heart. I think it comes through in everything you do.
it's so true. I think we remember the polar extremes. I have
Yeah.
in my speaking, I have a couple of cases of, and I will never be this leader. Like this leader was this way, and I chose, like, that was a great lesson. I will never be that kind of person.
You know you are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
On the other hand, there's this person, and they're the people you described, the ones that were really there even when you felt lost. They were the ones that sort of showed up when you didn't even know you needed them to show up. They're the ones that took you in and taught you just that one thing that tipped the scales and made everything shift for you, right? And you,
Agreed. Yeah. But
yeah,
you're right. You don't forget the bad ones either. I mean, those bad ones stick there with you for a while too. And they are good examples never to forget, because if nothing else, they remind you of how you felt at that
yeah,
moment when you were working with them and how you don't want to make somebody feel that same way.
it's so true. So this is you moving through your identity shift too. Like as we're talking, this is your identity shift. It moves through your career. you can kind of how actually I was going to say you could kind of encapsulate your philosophy. If you were to encapsulate your philosophy, what would you say that was
Um,
or
well, I
is?
mean, I would say lead by example is one of the things, right? I think
Yeah.
lead as you want to be led, right? So I think that's part of it. The other thing is, I mean, we talked a bit about mentorship and sponsorship. Um, for me, it's very important in the mentorship side of the house because I think representation matters, right? In any
Hmm.
aspect, whether it be
I
as
was
a
hoping we'd
woman.
talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah, as a woman
Yes.
in fintech or as a minority in the tech industry, or even believe it or not, as a New Yorker moving to another side of the world and being viewed a certain way. I mean, it does make a difference. And I think for me, it's important to be proud of who I am, where I came from, and leading and making everybody feel like I didn't start off in tech. That wasn't where I came from, right? I wasn't building code from the beginning, and but going the path that I was the path that worked for me. It may not work for everybody else, right? There may be an easier path or a less volatile or a different solution, but I think for me, representation is key. And being able to tell somebody it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. You don't want to know when you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, right? That's okay because everything that you do and every path that you take leads you to where you're ultimately going to end up.
Very true. Right. It does help if you know where you want to go,
Hmm.
right? So, I know you're in this position and you're probably very happy in this position. Do you have a next in mind?
I do. I always said I've been in tech, I've been in banking, but this idea of helping, like whether it be in an advisory role or working with board members to help tech companies start from where they are and give them the tools to help them grow into what they want to be. I love the idea of advising startups, fintech startups, and um, whether it be getting into the payments or the financial space or working with bank startups and understanding how do they get into how do they incorporate tech into their business. The world is changing. I mean, you started the conversation with AI, and there's this fear of AI and embracing it, how it grows into your industry, but working with companies who are want to help people grow into whether it be AI, payments facilitation, payment processing, or just becoming the next, um, I don't know, Apple Pay in the world, right? What does that look like? That's where I see my path going.
It's amazing. It's good. We'll talk after the show because I have some ideas for you. And
Oh, good. I'll take it.
that's awesome. What do you think your legacy is going to be?
Um, so this is going to be sound a little bit corny, but my family is the most important thing in my life, beyond everything else. And being an example for my children and my boys to be what because I think success has different definitions, right? To be me being successful is being able to be provide for my family something that gives them a future. I don't want to say future proof their future, financially, but giving them the tools to be able to feel comfortable in their lives financially is important. So that to me is my legacy, being able to provide to my family a sense of stability, at least on the financial side, and to be able to be happy in the future.
That's so amazing. And being corny is very much welcome here. So that's fabulous. You were really well connected to your dad.
I am, and I
Yeah.
was, yes.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
know this from our previous conversation, and I just wondered if you could talk about the lessons you learned from him that you find yourself passing along and how significant a model he was for you.
So, my father was for the family, he was the head of the family. He wasn't the oldest. He wasn't the I would say the most successful, but everybody looked at him as the head of our family, right? And anybody, whether it be his older siblings, his older parents, or aunts and uncles, they always went to him when they had a question because he seemed to be the one who led with, he had this, just this air of leadership. And everybody just went to him for when they had problems or questions or how should we do this? Tommy, how should we do this? And unfortunately, he passed away pretty young. He was 57. He had a massive
Mm.
heart attack, and he passed away. And somehow I just landed into that role. It was, again, I am not the oldest in my family. I am not the most educated out of the family, but I find myself being the one that everybody kind of comes to when they have questions about things, whether it be my older uncle, in or my aunt, or my cousin saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" It was just a role that was, I guess, made, and I just kind of inherited, I will say, from my father. And I think it's because, to be completely honest, it was this positivity that he eluded, right? It was this idea that anything, you could do anything, right? There was never anything that was not possible, right? If you put your mind to it and you worked hard enough, and if you could do it. And that's the attitude that I think he always gave to everybody. And this, he was something else that I think we didn't discuss, and I think that's very important. My dad was worked in for Pepsi Cola at the time. He was a Teamster. He worked as a machinist mechanic, and his legacy was always, I want to do something for somebody else. So he was man of the year in New York for cystic fibrosis. I mean, he every year he adopted this orphanage in New Jersey, and he was the one who got all the money collected from all the people at the plant to be able to buy gifts for something. It was this thing that he had that was just unselfish, to want to help other people and to be able to just bring people together. And I mean, people would see him and they were like, "Oh, Tommy, please don't ask us for any more money." But they gave it to him, and he would build out this thing. And it was not just in his personal family life, and it was his professional life. And he was seen as a natural born leader. And I think I just inherited that. And it's a privilege and an honor for me to be able to say that I feel like I took on his legacy and I just ran with it.
There's so much there, Barbara. It's so powerful. It's so good. Do you see any of that being taken on by your boys?
I do. I have, it's funny. I look at, I have I'm going to say, as a mom, both my boys are amazing boys, right?
Of
But there's
course.
one of my sons who has this, he just has it. It's like this it factor that people are just tend to be drawn to him. And no matter how much I argue with him to be like, listen, you have to put I was just talking to his godmother the other day, and she's like, I want to get angry at him because he puts himself aside, because if one of his friends says, "Hey, I need help," and he will drop what he's doing to go run for them. And it's a trait that you don't want to squash because it's this natural giving trait. And I'm like, he learned this. He saw this behavior, and this is just natural for him. So I see the trait in him. Sometimes I'm like, "Hey, you have to little focus a little bit more. You can't save the world." But then he looks at me and said, "But mom, I learned this from you." So it's a different, it's funny to see how it just naturally keeps on going forward.
You told me a story earlier prior to this call. We had a previous call. You
Hmm.
told me a story about um, a homeless person and
Yeah,
how
his Happy Meal.
your son had yeah, had a happy meal that he wanted to give.
Yeah, so we were just driving. It's so funny. And at there, you see sometimes it's not a common occurrence here where we're at, but you see a homeless person at a traffic light. And I always say I feel like they come straight for me because they know that I can't just say no, right? I feel like, and I've had people tell me, "Oh, they're just going to use it for drugs or they're just going to use it for alcohol." It's like, that's okay, but you know what? In my place, I feel the need to be able to give. So we were at a traffic light. We had just come from McDonald's, and I got him his Happy Meal, and he was sitting in his car seat, and he asked me to open the window so he could give the hamburger to the homeless guy on the corner. And I was like, I don't even know if I can. I don't even know what to say. I think in that moment I felt like, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, a child in a car seat that's like, "Mom, please, allow me allow me to give
Give
my
him my
stuff away."
Happy Meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so something, and it's funny because it stuck with me all these years. He is 19 years old now. If he heard me telling this story, he'd be like, "Really, mom?" But the reality is, it's something that I was like, even at that young age, he recognized that there's people out there who may not be as privileged as you, and giving is okay, even if it means sacrificing your meal for that one moment, because you have another meal at home. So
It's amazing. I think there's so many lessons just in this conversation. It's so great. If we lived in this way of see where you can lift another. And whether that's at work and you might know something that they don't know and you can impart that information, if you can give to someone less fortunate. And the trick to that is to do it without needing to be thanked. That's, you
I
know,
agree.
a lot of times there's a parade, that people throw themselves, like, I gave X amount to this charity, or look at me, I'm giving so much to this person, I'm bringing them in. Like, there's influencers on social media that will film themselves doing their good deed, and it makes it not such a good deed. It's
No, I agree. I think in everything, I think we talked a little bit about doing things without expecting anything in return, whether
mhm.
it be, the praise. And I know that there are people who need that sense of validation when they do something, right? Sometimes you just do things just because, right? And those are the most, to me, those are the times. I'll give another example. I have watched people, and I travel a lot for work and in the airports, and you see service members eating, and then all of a sudden their bills are paid. That to me is, something that is amazing. So every time, every chance I get, and I've heard, oh, pay it forward. When people do things unselfishly without any regard, but just because it comes from their heart and they feel empowered to do something or to do it, I
Yes,
think it's just so much more because somebody else sees that. Whether you may not be getting the praise in the moment, but believe me, there's somebody else who's seeing that, and you're changing them to think about, maybe I should do something like that. You
exactly
know,
right. Someone else is seeing it, someone else is feeling it, and you've made a ripple whether you see it or not. And
agreed.
yeah, yeah, so good. The idea of give from the heart. And I guess the one thing I would say that slightly amplifies that is start paying attention to that heart. Like, a lot of times we're so busy with blinders on and trying to do that thing that we set out to do. And if you set out to do that thing with intention, that's great. And keep your heart open. There are places and people that need that extra care. And, you know,
But that's so hard sometimes, isn't it, Dr. Wayne? I think when I think about it, I think people who do who are a little bit more afraid to do this because they're afraid of getting hurt, right? And I think that could happen, or being scammed or being taken advantage of. So I think it's hard to just do things unselfishly and
yeah.
not and sometimes you could be taken advantage of. That happens unfortunately every day, but I think that's where there's a little difficult for people to do sometimes.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. The fear of rejection, the fear of
Mm,
abandonment, the fear of being ostracized all comes from, being good enough or, and so the idea of doing good is sort of, look, I'm doing a good deed. But if you do it without the need to be acknowledged, that's something. And then it's like that is so strong. And the fear of being found out for doing something that might be wrong, like, oh, this person just used it for alcohol. You had your heart in the right place when you did the thing. And what the other person did with your gift is up to them,
agreed.
you
Hmm.
know? And it's like you didn't set out to do damage. So, that's a different thing. Like, if you set out to do damage and then you were judged for your intention to do damage, okay, maybe you earned that judgment. You set out to do something good, and it did or didn't go the way you thought it would go, continue to do that good, right? Continue to set out and do that good. I'm looking at our time and I'm just wondering, what did we not talk about yet that maybe you were thinking we would talk about or that you definitely
Well,
wanted to
I
share?
I would love to talk a little bit more about what we're talking about, how representation
Oh,
matters
please. Yes.
in society, right? In the different areas. I think that's something that I'm very passionate about in my mentorship role, right? So I've had the opportunity to work and build out these I'm going to call them inclusion networks in some of the industries that I work for, and having not only being able to bring people together and move forward in my industry, it was STEM, working in the technology sector. Women are underrepresented, minorities are underrepresented, and being able to drive that forward a bit and try to educate people on opportunities that are there. There's this fabulous program that I did that was called and I'm going to announce it because anybody who has an opportunity to do it should. It's called Girls Who Code. You go into these elementary schools and you work with kids and you teach them a little bit about coding and technology, and it's something that um, it's so funny because it's this little bit of exposure to this new industry changes people's lives, right? So you know to me, coding and tech and development was something that was completely foreign. I mean, in when I was in school, we weren't learning how to write code, but now it seems to be like in elementary schools, these kids are learning how to code. They're learning coding languages pretty early on because it's part of their career path and their career growth. But exposing different people who may not have an opportunity to learn about these different tech jobs or industry, or even being able to understand what it means for you is important.
I love that. I love that. All of it. Girls Who Code. How do people find out more about that?
So that's funny. So I was exposed to it at when I was working at one of my fintech companies. There was this group called Girls Who Code. We went online and they were like, "Hey, do you want to volunteer and teach coding to elementary school kids?" It's a website that you could just log on to. And I was like, "I am not the person. I am not the tech person. I am not the developer." And they're like, "No, it's okay. You don't have to be. You just go and you work with them. The program does it all. They just need someone who can sponsor them in the space and who will go in there and lead the program." And I was like, "Hey, I'm all for it." And you go to underprivileged school, underserved schools, and you'll be able to do this. It was a great program that, and I wish that I had a little bit more exposure to it as we grow. But there's different groups out there. I think working with underprivileged, underserved, or another group that I had the opportunity to work with was emerging youth. And I was like, what is this emerging youth term? And it's these groups of children who, I guess one of them is like kids who are aging out of the foster care system, who are needing to learn how to just learn financial wellness or learn different technology providers. There's different, and I would love at some point to learn a little bit more or give more information about these different opportunities that are out there for people who, you may not be a techie, but you may just have a desire to want to help people get into or learn about the space a little bit more and learn yourself. There's groups out there that help um, motivate you and get you up to speed on this.
So good. It's really good. What if people want to find more about you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I have my LinkedIn profile. I'd love to be able to talk and engage more with people through there. I have a website, barbarajnegron.com, where it tells a little bit about some of the speaking engagements I've done and some of the papers I've written on fintechs and embedded finance and growth, and love to educate anybody and who wants to learn about what it is to become an embedded finance or a fintech, or how do I get into the space? I'm open to help anybody who is interesting. Just feel free to reach out and happy to connect.
That's amazing. So good. This was fast. I love it when conversations just kind of fly by. This was really great. Barbara, thanks
Well,
for being here. Yeah.
no, thank you for having me. You made this conversation very easy. I'd love to be able to talk a little bit about this and grow and help anybody who wants to get into the space. Again, unconventional path, but I'm here and helping people to be able to understand what their path is and move them forward to that and give them the tools or even maybe the connections so that they the people they need to meet. I'm happy to do so.
Unconventional is the best way.
It always is.
All right. My guest today has been Barbara Negron, Barbara Negron. I'm spelling it for you so you can find her on LinkedIn, barbarajnegron.com. Barbara, again, thanks for being here.
Man, thank you.
Alrighty, this is One Sharp Sword. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, your guide, your coach on this journey, and we will see you again here next week. Thanks for tuning in. If you loved this, please leave a comment about what was the most inspiring piece of this for you, and maybe what action you're taking as a result of it. I'd love to learn that. So thanks again. Share this, like it, and we'll see you here next week.